Paranormal Chronicles Network presents the Event Horizon Show with your host, Dave Dominguez.
Welcome everyone to the Event Horizon Show. I'm your host, Dave Dominguez, out of the West Texas town of El Paso, and I'm glad you joined us here today. We have a great show planned for you, very interesting, lots of facts, lots of very interesting topics that we're going to cover this evening. Our guest today is Justyne Williamson. She's a historian. She's into local history and world history, and probably the smartest person I know, actually, to tell you the truth.
Hi everybody, I'm Dave's cousin as well. I teach history at a local high school, and I've always just been curious about the paranormal and unexplained stuff. Probably because I have an older brother who's into it. My dad was into it. So what I do is I look at it from a logical perspective first. Like, what's the logical explanation? And if I can't find an explanation, then let's look at the paranormal and the unexplained.
At least you got the brains of the family. So, so Justyne, so tell us, what have you got in store for us tonight? What are we going to talk about? What's our first topic?
My little notes, I have people first.
And I know that last time, before we talked about you coming on the show, you were mentioning Amelia Earhart. Now, I saw that they had possibly found some of her planes and maybe one of her compacts or something, or shoe or whatever on one of the islands.
Yeah. Actually, they found it like about 3 years after she died. They explored an island in the direction where she was heading, and they found a female skeleton on one of the beaches, and it was a white female skeleton with her stature.
How can they tell it has no skin?
Well, you know, with forensics.
Yes.
So you could tell ethnicities from bones. But they also found pieces of the airplane windshields and navigational equipment, which was the same as the one she was using in her plane.
So you're saying this was kept quiet?
Yeah, or forgotten, or nobody's ever cared. But it seems like the case is closed.
But this was like the most, the most, story of the 20th century. What happened to Amelia Earhart? The biggest mystery.
Yeah, it's kind of like the Malaysia flight that disappeared too, and nobody ever bothered to kind of publicize it. Yeah,
because it wasn't really followed up until later on. Because the war came on and all that and everything.
Yeah, then the war happened. See, I think they found the possible skeleton in 1940.
Oh, okay. So you don't think she wasn't captured and killed by the Japanese?
Probably not. That would be the second most likely explanation, I'd say.
Now, did they ever find Fred Noonan, her co-pilot?
No, I've only ever heard about her skeleton, so I've never heard anything about the co-pilot.
Well, it was rumored they were having an affair.
Yeah, I've heard that too. So we'll see. And I wonder if he had a volleyball to keep him company afterwards.
Or something. Some sort of ball kept him company afterwards. That's really interesting because now they're saying that, they found her plane because we just saw a recent documentary and they're making a big old hoopla about this. But in reality, you're saying that they already knew.
Yeah, they probably did.
They just didn't want to release it.
Yeah, or nobody cared because then the war broke out and then you get the 50s and the Cold War. So it's just kind of a hobbyist thing.
Maybe they were thinking it was going to demoralize everybody in the home front, knowing that we're about to go to war.
Yeah, it could have. And it's like, well... Or they forgot, maybe because she was a woman, and they're like, whatever, and then you start getting the space race and astronauts.
Amelia Earhart. How could they forget?
Right?
Think about it. It was what, the biggest sea rescue attempt in history.
Yeah, I wonder what happened to the skeleton. Did they pick it up? Did they leave it there? See, I've never heard if they disposed of the skeleton, if they have it. Yeah, I wish they'd picked it up for posterity, because nowadays we could have done like genetic testing on it.
Yeah, you'd think, if they could find it. But you know what? It's one of those things that's probably in a box next to the Lost Ark.
Oh yeah, she'll show up. Things tend to just turn up.
Yeah, I think so. Another thing we were talking about was Jack the Ripper. You know all about that. You know who he was. Yeah. You know the size of his underwear, what he ate his last meal, everything.
Not that, just things that whoever did it probably had medical experience because it was surgical cuts. But two things recently. They're saying it's either English poet Francis Thompson, because that dude was dating a prostitute who dumped him. Might have had an axe to grind. He had a medical, surgical training, and some of his poetry is about killing a prostitute. And he was living at that time, so it makes sense. And then another one, a Polish immigrant, Aaron Kosminski, that was certifiably insane. That with him, somebody bought a shawl from one of the victims. And this person had DNA testing done, and he claims that it matched Polish person, so they're thinking it was him.
But he could have just been one of the tricks for that night.
Yeah,
or whatever.
patrons.
One of the Johns.
And this guy, though, Kosminski, was committed. His family committed him, and the murder stopped after he was committed.
Now, what happened? Did he die in prison?
In the asylum.
Oh, okay. Because I heard that he actually they think he might have traveled to the U.S. because a series of murders started a few years afterwards in New York.
Yeah, wasn't there some at the World's Fair?
Something like
around
that,
time, that book, Devil in the White City, is about that. But people said that he might have come here. Yeah, which is kind of like the Black Dahlia murders as well. Those were very surgical and unsolved, so that's all kinds of creepy.
Well, it was just one murder.
Yeah, I'm not as familiar with that one, but that one's gross.
Yeah, they cut her head off.
Yeah, she was all dissected. Yeah, and then you probably know more about D.B. Cooper than
what? I know a little bit of him. I know that he disappeared in the Northwest. I know they recently found his money, some money, not all of it, but and it was still in remarkable. Well conditioned, good condition.
The bills. Well, I saw an interview with the woman who claimed to be his wife, and she said that, he had a different name, but on his deathbed, he said that he was D.B. Cooper, that he had jumped out of the plane with the money, which is a little hard to believe.
It's hard to believe. How do you survive jumping out of it?
I guess he was wearing a parachute.
747? Well, yes, he was wearing a parachute.
But it's like nobody noticed a man just popped out of the plane.
Well, but he was over the Pacific Northwest. It wasn't very populated. It was a very remote area, and it was at night.
Yeah, oh, well, that kind of makes sense. Although statistically, you probably wouldn't he have gotten lost in the woods?
Well, maybe. Bigfoot may have
eaten him, or he could have been a survivalist. People stay lost for a long time, like that person they found living on Area 51 a few years ago.
No, I never heard about that.
Some guy, some hobo, was living in Area 51, and nobody had noticed because he was living in some little cave. They kicked him off, but he was out there.
Could you imagine what he saw? All the stuff that guy must have seen.
Although he might have been some recluse just living in a little cave.
Probably didn't care. Probably didn't even know what he was, or didn't even look.
Shows you how well guarded it is.
And you have all these little tidbits of stuff. Is this like a secret historical thing that you get?
I just watch and read a lot of stuff, and I tend to remember things. If I find it interesting, I'll remember it, definitely.
There was other stuff that we were talking about, ancient and unusual artifacts. It might have been maybe like an anachronism or something, and they were found, like that mechanism that was found in Greece. Yeah,
the Antikythera, excuse me if I butcher it, the Antikythera mechanism, which they're not sure what it is, but it has a lot of gears, and looks like the little cogs on a watch, on a clock. So was it for navigation? They're not sure, but they can't give it a context. Why did they make it? Because it doesn't match with what little technology they had, 3,000 years ago.
Didn't they make a copy? Didn't they take x-rays of it and they were able to duplicate it and they made a copy? They recreated it?
Yeah, I think so, but what's its purpose?
But it didn't do anything.
Unless somebody just, tooling around, hobby is. Yeah. And then the other Greek one, the Phaistos disc, which slightly has more of an obvious purpose. It's an alphabet on each side, and it has symbols and what looks like an alphabet. They can't match it to any other alphabet. It doesn't look like Phoenician, like Greek writing in the slightest, so they're not sure. It has little pictures of little heads and axes and a little human figures, and it goes in a snail shell pattern on each side. So they don't know, is it just an alphabet?
And how old is it?
It's 3,000 years old, something like that. And
it's a disc
it's made out of clay.
Oh, made out of clay. Okay, I was thinking it was like a metal disc.
No, it's made out of clay, and they thought, is it a game or something like that? But who would be playing a board game thousands of years ago? And the only people that would have been writing were scribes. So what's the point of this clay disc that cannot be deciphered?
How big is it?
Maybe the size of a plate.
Like an LP.
Yeah, it's like that. Decent size. I'm motioning with my hands, and nobody can see it. But
that's okay. I can't. That's what I'm curious. What makes it so special?
I guess because they can't decipher the alphabet, and it's not the Phoenician alphabet or anything like that, which is the Phoenicians gave rise to the Greek alphabet. So they're not sure why it exists. And thousands of years ago, the only writing was of the elite. So the only people that would have been writing was scribes paid by monarchs, but they can't find any other writing like it.
Maybe once. Pre-Phoenician? Maybe it was a pre-civilization that was
it's the original, only one of its kind, and they haven't found any other writing like it. So what is it there for?
And the Baghdad Battery, we were talking about that as well.
Yeah, that one, a lot of people, the logical explanation, it's for soldering jewelry, because it does hold a charge. There are these little vases that have little, like citric acid or something in it, because you can get a charge out of fruits and vegetables, and they didn't know what it was for, but they had a whole bunch of them. They found a whole bunch of them in a row at one point, I think. But So a lot of people thought, are they making batteries? Is it electricity? Because it would be really old. It's from Mesopotamia. But the most recent I heard is it's for soldering jewelry. You get an electrical charge so you can melt metal.
Because it does give off like a little, little charge.
A little spark. They thought it was for recording sound as well. It's so weak at it that you can't really play anything back or hear what it records. So that was a bust. So it's just for fashion.
Yeah, because all these years, reading about it, even when I was a kid, I'd read about it, and they said it was a battery.
Well, it holds a charge. So it does the same function as a battery, but it's a charge to make jewelry. Probably not as unique as, I think some hikers one time found a spark plug, like out hiking in the West Coast, and it was like really old, so supposedly it predates cars. The spark plug they found.
Wasn't it embedded in a rock or something?
God knows how old that happened, or it was a long time ago. They might have been able to date it better at this point. And then the Voynich manuscripts, so they're strange books as well. That one, I think the person who bought it, that their name was Voynich, and it sat dormant in libraries. It was in Rome, and then somebody bought it. I think is it in the United States now? I'm not sure. But it's a book. It's missing pages. It's like 200 and something pages long, and it has this weird language, this weird writing that's never been decoded. So they don't think it's an original writing. They think it's in code or like some kind of cipher, like somebody made up writing.
And it has a lot of artwork in it too, right?
Yeah, it has artwork of like little nude nymphs and ladies in pools. So it has chapters on plants, chapters on people and other things. And the plants aren't plants that are
native to anywhere.
Native to anywhere. They're made up plants, or they'll take like the roots from one plant and then the stem from another and the petals from another and squish them together. So was it an elaborate hoax? Was it
aliens?
A code? Aliens? People said that it was English writer John Dee, but it's older than Dee. I think Dee wanted to acquire it, and it ended up in some Austrian noble's court. So it's from the 1400s. It's missing pages. There's one section where it has Latin writing, but those might have been notes added later. It also has astronomy in it.
So if this 1400s, it predates Leonardo da Vinci, so he couldn't have written it.
Yeah, oh no, because his writing, it's very...
Because he wrote in code.
Yeah, his code writing is very particular, and his stuff is better preserved, I'd say, because it's all kept. Because
I heard at first they thought it was a religious manuscript of some kind.
Could be. Like, they say it's glossolalia, that it's somebody writing in codes or channeling angels, so it's this weird... But even the World War II code crackers couldn't. So it makes me wonder, maybe the Lost Pages had it. It does repeat letters, so it looks code-like, or are those repetitious letters just to throw you off? Or does that mean a space, or nobody's been able to break that code?
I mean, I've seen it. I've seen pictures of it. It's real beautiful.
And some modern author made some gibberish book as well, the Codex Seraphianus, but that one is a work of art, and they did it just on purpose. I think they're probably inspired by the Voynich manuscript. I've seen that one completely. It has really bizarre drawings, but it's neat to look at.
And where's that one from?
I think it's an Italian author that did it, and you can probably just download it. A student actually gave it to me on a USB, and I looked through it, and I'm like, this is weird, but it's very similar to the Voynich.
We're here with Justyne Williamson on the Event Horizon show, and that was a shock to me. I never heard anything about Amelia Earhart, that they might have found her just a few years later, or parts of the plane and all that, because it's been such a mystery, and all these other topics that we have.
I think people like the mystery. Like, maybe they don't want to know, because if it's debunked, what a letdown.
I think that the government people, they know a lot, they just don't say anything.
Yeah, because you don't want a populace that knows too much.
And it's really expensive to change history books and change.
Oh yeah. I mean, like, there's Korean War documents that have barely been declassified in the last 10 years, and declassified, they're still blacked out.
Okay, okay, I've seen them redacted.
Yeah. Yes,
they're redacted. That's amazing. But not only that, but you're also into cryptids and things of that sort.
Well, there's also, before we get to that, the maps.
Oh, that's right.
Those strange maps, like the Piri race map, which is a Turkish map from the 1500s that has the coast of Antarctica on it. And that one, again, the logical explanation, Middle Eastern world, so Dar al-Islam, the realm of Islam, the Islamic world was the most advanced in math and science.
At the time.
Yeah, from 1100s to like 1600s, and then Europe surpassed them with the Enlightenment. But until that point, the map-making skills were the best. I mean, the Chinese would import Arab doctors, foreign doctors. So I'm thinking the Piri race map is Turkish. I'm guessing it was their cartography and mathematical skills. They just got it right.
I think I saw a documentary where they showed it, and since then Antarctica's changed, the coastline's changed, but at the time, it's a map of what it was at the time when they showed that this is what it looked like at the time, so how do they know?
Yeah, which is weird. I mean, it's possible they could have explored it if there was the 1500s and Columbus had already crossed the Atlantic.
But in what? Those ships couldn't get down there because of all the ice and everything.
Yeah, it's cold. I mean, the Chinese would have had better luck exploring it with their junk ships.
Yeah, which were
but their fleet was burned. The emperor at the time, the Ming Dynasty, burned them because it was expensive. They were about to set off on a voyage. The Columbus of China, Zhang He.
Yes.
Yeah, that explorer, the eunuch explorer, to go east. And they would have hit the coast of California or South America, and the dynasty just suspended the voyages. It got expensive and burned all of the ships.
You don't think they actually came here?
I wonder, because they've found pieces of things, like old ships in South America that are Chinese, that look Chinese.
And then you have a lot of people in South America that look Chinese.
Yes, that are Asiatic.
Whole villages that are Chinese.
That look it. And
Chinos Poblanos.
Yeah, and I've also heard that those could have been like Neolithic Japanese that island hopped and made their way to South America. So, but they're Asiatic there, just like there are Neolithic Europeans that followed the frozen coast and ended up in North America. So genetic research proves that one.
Oh, you were telling me about that.
So like prehistoric, Neolithic Europeans, some of them, I guess, fishing seals or whatever, Arctic animals, just ended up going along the coastline and bypassing Iceland and Greenland and ended up in North America. So some of the earliest people here,
they could have intermingled. And
were Europeans. So they were coming from the Bering Strait and from Europe, possibly Japan.
Well, I heard that the Vikings and all that, those explorers, they knew about Eskimos. Because they lived in Greenland. They lived at the time they lived there.
Yeah, because there's indigenous in Greenland, and then they had a word. They called the Native Americans Skraeling, and then they started fighting. And some died on both sides, and then it was just too costly of a voyage for the Vikings, so they left. But they found Viking stuff as far as Maine.
I don't know if they did in Maine. I know they did in Nova Scotia.
Coins.
In what is it, Lansdowne Meadows?
Yeah, Lansdowne Meadows.
Yes.
But I've heard it's like even inside like the northern part of the United States, they found coins.
I thought that they found a sword one time somewhere in Canada.
Possibly, or like a runic writing, like a runestone, but I've heard that one was a hoax.
Yeah, there's some that they don't know that they're thinking maybe it's real, because they found runic writings all over the country, actually.
Yeah, there's an American Stonehenge as well, and somewhere on the eastern...
It's in Kentucky, I think.
Yeah, and it has like an echo chamber inside.
Yeah, they showed that on TV on that America Unearthed.
Oh, yeah, I remember seeing it.
The season, but that was an amazing show. They had an episode where they actually found Crusader swords in a cave or not a cave, but in a mound in Arizona, buried. This guy in the 20s was digging for that Indian Caliche, I guess, whatever he's doing, and he found some swords, and they were identical to Crusader swords, and they were dated back to the Crusades.
Oh, well, that reminds me. Yeah. In Mexico, they've found, this is kind of trippy, these two things. Mexico, on the Mexican flag, it has an eagle eating a snake. And a lot of Roman tombs belonging to Roman soldiers, the symbol is an eagle eating a snake. Yeah, they were big into eagles. And then in Mexico, they've unearthed little figures that they look Roman. It looks like it was made by the Romans, these little heads, these little figures. But how on earth did they get there? So that's bizarre.
That is bizarre.
Yeah, and then, of course, there's Rome losing legions, lost legion. Supposedly, one of the legions fighting the Parthians, like in Persia, got so lost, they ended up in Western China and settled there. Some of them survived and never went back and just settled in Western China. And Western China has a little town called Liqian, and they claim that their homeland is the West. So they bury their people facing west. Some of the people have green eyes, and they're slightly more Western looking. It could be Uyghur Turks. I don't know. It's weird. They have statues that have somewhat like vaguely Roman dress. And very strange.
No, they had quite a few lost legions.
Oh, yeah.
Those
like
guys
one
disappeared.
in Britain that probably got decimated by the Picts.
And the Celts and guys.
Oh, yeah. No mercy there.
But those guys weren't even Roman, really, is my understanding. They were just locals, and that they were trained. Maybe they had Roman officers or something, but they weren't actual Roman troops from Rome, from Italy.
Oh, yeah. They wouldn't have been, because Rome just did that with anybody in their empire that wanted to be.
That's my understanding, that the ones that on Hadrian's Wall...
Oh, yeah.
They weren't actual Romans. They were Brits that lived there that were recruited by the Romans, who the Romans, I guess, gave Roman citizenship to if they served. And then they started settling there and bringing their families and everything.
And then the officers might stick around and marry like a Celtic princess or whatever.
Yeah.
But that's the legend of King Arthur as well. He's Romano-British. Yeah, in his genealogy and these Arthurian legends, he's Roman and British, both.
I don't know, but that was amazing because, here I thought they were guys from Rome so far away, but actually they were just locals.
Yeah, they're locals, so it would have been some Roman officers that made it to China.
Yeah, that's right, because they had like a Roman governor and all that that would govern the little town or the little province or whatever, and he would build his little
communities. Yeah, they found a burial, some part of Britain recently, of a Roman, like from either Spain or Rome, a Roman official who was like ex-military and had retired, and they found a portrait of him, and he looks like Sylvester Stallone.
Yeah, he had like a bathhouse.
And
he could be heated from underneath. All that good stuff.
Oh, yeah, with the hypocaust. Cool. Yeah, he's living it up out there.
Yeah, and then just the locals were there. Yeah, that was interesting. And their clothing would change and their uniforms would change. So by the end of the Roman Empire, they didn't look like you see on TV.
Oh no,
they were just like a mishmash.
They might have gone to like conquer Germanic tribes looking Roman, and then they'd come back to if they came back to Rome, they came back with the long hair and the beard and the leather pants. The Eastern Roman Empire forbid them from having long hair and beards and wearing pants because they said, "You're Roman, you better look and act like it." Because they started adopting other cultures, and so the Byzantine half said, "You know what? We're done. We're cutting the West off."
That's the Turkish half. Well, that's.
Oh yeah.
So that's when you had the Holy Roman Empire, blah blah.
Yeah, and Constantine, and then Eastern Orthodoxy, and things.
And that's for
like
another show.
Yeah.
That's a little too complicated for me sometimes.
Yeah, and then speaking of other people in China, there's the Dropa people, Zopa people, DZOPA or PA. These people claim to be aliens.
Really?
To be descendants of aliens, that their ship crashed. And in some part of China, a more remote part, I've seen photographs of these people. They do not look Chinese. They're odd. If you just Google it. And they have these little stones that are like, it looks like the Phaistos disc, like a snail shell, like spiraling stones. And they say that when they crash landed, they told the locals we're from space, and the locals just freaked out and wanted to run them off.
So they don't look Chinese.
Nope. And then there was also talk. Native American tribes tell stories about red-haired giants, like around Utah or something, and found skeletons and things.
Quite a few, like in California.
Yeah,
in the West.
Southwest. Yeah, in the West. And they talk about. I've heard stories how those giants were very aggressive, and how the tribes had to like protect themselves and get.
Because they were eating their children.
Yeah, so they might have like set fire to the cave and burned them out.
I heard about that, but I don't know how I wasn't sure they didn't go into how they killed them or anything like that. But they were catching their children, they were eating their children, so that's why they had to do that. You don't obviously you don't have a lesson plan to teach your students about this. I don't know, well maybe you do.
Oh yeah,
but it's not something
I'll mention it to keep the kids' attention. I'll be like, oh, and by the way, this community in China claims to be from aliens.
So.
Show us pictures. You just pulled up a picture of the supposed the light bulb.
The light bulb in the pyramid.
And the pyramids, the hieroglyphs that have a light bulb in the pyramid. I've also heard it's like a lotus flower. Could be a symbol of like fertility and like blooming and things like that. You know what's also strange is that there's also a hieroglyph of a helicopter. And they've done tests because they thought, you just shine mirrors against each other. Mirror making at that time was basically polished silver. It doesn't carry not nearly as much reflection as a modern mirror, so it won't reflect light nearly enough. To get inside the pyramid, it's impossible. There's no scorch marks on the stone.
Or the ceiling or anything from the torches or anything.
I wonder, what I think is, did they make it backwards from the inside out? Like, do the hieroglyphs first and then build around it? Yeah, so do your hallways on the inside first and then just start building on top.
Or they knew where that stone was going to go, and they built it on the outside, and then they just put it all together.
Yeah, just planned it. And then about 2 or 3 years ago, they found a hieroglyph that explains how they moved a lot of the pyramid bricks. It's very simple. Simple physics. It's wet sand. There's a hieroglyph where there's people moving the bricks, and then there's 2 people in front with a little vessel of water. They thought they were giving a blessing. It's slaves wetting the sands, because if you wet it too much, the brick will sink. If you don't wet it enough, it won't move. If you wet it just right, you'll create friction and enough to glide.
The same concept as those moving stones in Death Valley.
Yes, that like you get condensation at night, and then the stones move, and then it stops.
And a bunch of people could push these.
Oh yeah.
So that's how. So there wasn't aliens.
No, a lot of it was solved. Other things that are plausible too is they might have imported logs from Iran, and because they had like timber, and you import it, and then you just rolled roll the logs. Like when you roll a whole bunch of pencils under your hand, so just keep rolling them.
But, the Nile would flood, and it would flood all the way to the pyramid.
Oh,
That's what they say, so they could float the stones.
Oh, yeah, on barges they were floating them. And do simple physics, and then pull them on the sand, and it's relatively simple. It takes forever, but it could be done.
I think it took more than 20 years to build it. What they say, they'd have to place one every minute for 20 years.
Oh, yeah, it took forever to build.
So, I think it was a generational thing.
What is strange is how all these mega structures match up to constellations, and it's not just the pyramids. It's Stonehenge. It's the Mexican pyramids. It's like Angkor Wat probably too. I put money on it. So all of them match up to constellations and align with a solstice.
The same with the American Stonehenge.
Yes,
the American Stonehenge and other stuff that they found here. A lot of stuff, even in Arizona stuff.
Yeah. Then what tribe is it? Is it the Anasazi that have those? That they have buildings that align with the solstice? Because I know the Incan stuff does as well.
I think so. I think the Anasazi did.
And is it the Anasazi that have those like three eras of life? There's Yaquakatsi and Koyaanisqatsi. So they talk about end times, different phases of life and stuff. And then there's like weird things all over the place. Costa Rica has these perfectly spearable like stone balls carving. Some are like just a few inches and some are huge, like several feet. Weigh like almost a ton. These stone balls dotting Costa Rica, and people don't know where they came from. And I'm kicking myself because I went to Costa Rica last year and never once saw these balls.
Oh wow! So you
I don't
found
know
no
if
balls
I
in
was
Costa
asleep
Rica.
on the bus and they probably said something and I missed it. But I never saw anything. I saw a waterfall, not the stone balls.
You didn't see any of the dinosaurs. That's where they say that.
Oh well, in Africa, the Mokele and Bembe that blocks the rivers going onto cryptids. That one's strange. And they've talked to the locals in the African rainforest in the Congo, and they'll show them pictures. Like scientists come and they'll show them a binder full of pictures that has like a bear and a giraffe and an elephant and a moose, like animals not even native in Africa. And the locals are like, no, it's not that. And then one of the pictures is a drawing of a dinosaur, of a brontosaurus, and they're like, that's the one. And that's creepy. They've found footprints. What I wonder is are they seeing an elephant trunk?
I don't know. I don't think so. It's not that big.
It's not that big. And then they find the leaves of the trees and the canopy have been bitten, which is odd. And then that name, the beast that stops the rivers, it's bizarre.
And I was thinking, well, why don't they take a satellite picture? But it's jungle.
It's jungle. I mean, they didn't discover gorillas till the late 1800s or the 1900s. The Europeans didn't believe the locals regarding gorillas. They said, oh, there's a big ape creature. And the Europeans were like, nah, there can't be. And there was. And so now we know, but I mean, sometimes it takes forever to photograph. We didn't know about giant squid until like 7 years ago? Theoretical, but the photographs, that Japanese submarine that captured them. So yeah, that one. Remember that movie in the 80s called Baby, where they found the dinosaur family with the animatronic?
You weren't even born yet. Wait a minute.
I vaguely remember watching it. I was like,
I remember that. Yeah,
that's very strange. And if something like a coelacanth can live, why not? And alligators, they're dinosaurs. They never went anywhere. Alligators and crocodiles haven't really changed ever.
Sharks.
Yeah, sharks. Oh yeah, sharks. And then birds. Dinosaurs probably were birds. Avian. The closest living descendant of the T-Rex is the chicken. Yeah, so every time I watch Jurassic Park, I just think, man, that would be a delicious amount of nuggets.
Oh,
I think if I could have a T-Rex, I'd be set for life with nuggets.
Oh, man. I see that, and I think of that Fred Flintstone cartoon where they put the big rack of ribs inside.
Yeah, so it's possible.
Yeah.
I mean,
I guess anything's possible.
Oh, yeah. It's to totally say you can't, you gotta leave yourself open to a sense of wonder. Sometimes that one, and then a whole bunch of what other, aside from Bigfoot, I mean, what I've always wondered is Bigfoot Neanderthal man. No, Neanderthal man was small. Another likely candidate was Australopithecus, that big ape. Could have been.
No, that was Gigantopithecus.
Australopithecus is human. Gigantopithecus. What's strange is that a lot of cultures have tales of Bigfoot. You see it in Australia. You see it in the Himalayas, Russia. You see it in Europe. There's European wood carvings and tales of wild men. And there's a very famous wood carving of a knight, like a German wood carving of a knight fighting this hairy wild man. And if Europeans hunted to extinction wolves and brown bears and throughout most of Europe, why not something else?
Well, I don't know if you remember a movie called The 13th Warrior.
I love it. I love it. First DVD I ever bought.
Did you ever read the book?
I read it. Yes.
Michael Crichton wrote it.
Yes.
And he theorized that they were actually fighting Neanderthals.
The Wendell.
Yeah, the Wendell were the actually Neanderthals. That was just amazing.
Yeah, and that I've always wondered, in Nordic mythology, are trolls Neanderthals? Are they describing trolls? I wonder if Neanderthal man lasted longer than we think. Especially if he was in southern Europe, because the ancient Greeks when they had the Olympics, they talked about how they would invite a tribe of werewolves that lived in the wilderness to compete, and they were very fierce and hairy, but they had strong brows and snouty faces. That's Neanderthal man. That's who they're describing. I'm like, were there Neanderthals? Because the Ice Age that glacier didn't go to Greece. So they could have lived had they gone to southern Europe.
Going back to that book by Michael Crichton, that was actually taken from a true manuscript from Ivan Fadlin from 927
And
AD.
he has the asterisk, the little footnote that says this is where his tale ends, and then he just went from there. There is a surviving record. It's like complete. Another Arab explorer, Ibn Battuta. His is all kind of blandly logical, though. It's called the Rilla. It's our best record of like medieval Africa, because that dude explored like 44 countries. He was traveling for 29 years. He left at 20 and came back at 49. So I have my advanced class read some of his writings. A lot of it is, I'm scandalized, because in Africa the women were topless, and so he's used to women being covered. But he went to Africa, throughout like parts of Eastern Europe, the Middle East, all the way to China. And he was a real person, unlike Marco Polo, who probably didn't exist.
I think he did.
Because they keep going back and forth, or he heard it secondhand. But something that he wrote about that they actually proved, he said that the sand in the desert, like the Gobi, made noise. That it was singing and it was moaning, and he blamed it on demons. Recently, scientists discovered that the sand, the particles, they have to be a specific size. They can't be too big or too little. They start to act the way liquid does. And there's video, they make noise. If you're walking, they'll hum. Or if you walk on it, it'll make like little burpy, like fart sound. Or if you start moving it fast, it'll sound like it's sighing, like it's like moaning. And yeah, it's really neat. It's a song on YouTube. It's called The Song of the Dunes, and the guy was testing it out in Morocco. But because Marco Polo's medieval European, he blamed it on like demons, but it's actually just wind. Yeah, they carry very slowly.
So Marco Polo's one of my favorite, historical characters.
His stories are great. Like he mentions a unicorn and it's a rhinoceros.
Did you ever read Gary Jennings' Marco Polo, the Journeyer?
No.
You need to read. That is like the most amazing book one of the most amazing books I've ever read. It's kind of like the 13th Warrior, but it's Marco Polo.
Marco Polo?
Yeah, and it's really, really neat. It's talks about a lot of characters, a lot of stuff that he did. And
because I've read the actual book. I had to read it in college. And he visits an island where the people have dog heads. So some things he's like, okay, buddy. And what is weird is that he never once mentions the Great Wall. It would have been there.
But he didn't go that far north.
No, he met the Emperor. He's at the Emperor's court.
North, but that's not where the Great Wall is.
Well, you're right. Yeah, he meets the Emperor, but even you think they would have shown it to him or talked about it.
Well,
but
maybe to them it wasn't a big deal, though.
Maybe, to them it wasn't a big deal. He was probably, I know he was very distracted by the prostitutes. Because in one of the parts I remember very clearly, he says that the women in China were so beautiful and smelled so pretty and were so friendly. It's like, come on, dude. You're either very courteous about their profession or you're very naive.
They're probably boys.
Yeah, they very well could have been boys. Maybe he just failed to mention that, he had a bad experience.
But yeah, going back to that, I think the Neanderthal man could have lived into modern time, or at least into
classical.
Historical.
Yeah, because a lot of cultures have those like hairy men, other beastly humans that weren't like, and geneticists have proven that they interbred with humans, and so European DNA, Middle Eastern DNA, some Asian DNA has Neanderthal material.
I have heard two theories that yes, they did,
and then no, they can't,
and then the other one that no, there's no way because they were completely different species.
Yeah, so I've heard both too, and the most recent one I've heard is that they did. I don't know.
Well, that we all have like at least 2%.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Especially if you're like European or Middle East, you've got some. Yeah, and I've also heard that they can talk, but that they couldn't talk. I've heard both.
Yeah, they didn't have that little bone in their throat.
The hyoid bone. I've also heard that they could, but if they even if they could, how much did they?
It was real raspy or something.
Yeah, or like high or something.
Yeah, 'cause I saw a documentary where they actually tried to
Replicate
the voice using a model of the little bone in their throat and everything, and it was real raspy.
I heard one where they tried to replicate it and it came out high. The raspy one matches the Bigfoot theory because there's recordings of Bigfoot where they're not yelling, it sounds like talking, and it's very raspy and it sounds very gibberishy. Yeah, the most recent one, they tried to replicate Neanderthal man and it sounded like Mickey Mouse, which is just laughable.
Oh, wow. No, I don't think so.
Yeah,
I don't think
it's like, no wonder humans wiped him out.
Yeah, they just
like,
got annoyed with them. Like,
you're so silly, we're going to... or you're annoying.
Maybe we just outbred them.
We outpaced them. A lot of the theory is that the Ice Age came and they stuck around Europe and humans were just, peace out. We're going someplace warmer.
And then I heard something about that they didn't reproduce
as fast, right?
It was like they took them 2 years to...
Yeah, that we reproduced quicker.
The female was pregnant 2 years.
Or something about didn't humans enter puberty faster than they did?
Something like that. Or like had they bred like 2 or 3% faster, that they'd still be here.
And then we had, better clothing and fire control abilities, apparently. So it kind of sucks to be them.
And I also heard that they couldn't have survived in a warmer climate.
Or they
couldn't have. They weren't bred for a warmer climate.
Oh,
they weren't comfortable. They had to stay up north in the cold. So, but you hear so much
stuff from different, and there's all these scientists saying it, recognized in their fields. Kind of have to just look at all of it.
Yeah, you see some guy with a beard in Discovery Channel, you've got to believe it.
You read it online.
Well, everything's true on the internet.
Neanderthal man's not the only one that was alive when humans were alive. Recently found finger bones from early humans that are around the same time as modern humans, and it's not Neanderthal, it's some other like small human. Yep, and then one that predates humans in Africa that was burying its dead. That species would be the first one to bury their dead. They are very petite.
You are listening to the Paranormal Chronicles Network. Please remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Visit theparanormalchronicles.com for paranormal news, reports, pictures, audio, and video content. Find us on Facebook at The Paranormal Chronicles. Together, we explore the unknown.
Serendipity Jewelry is beautiful, handmade jewelry by a Native American artist. Treat yourself or a loved one to earrings, bracelets, and necklaces. All items are lovingly crafted using real natural crystals and materials. Join us on Facebook at Serendipity Jewelry and message us for further information, to browse our items, or for beautiful handcrafted gifts. Serendipity Jewelry. Spiritual beauty for you.
Do you believe in ghosts? A Most Haunted House is the true best-selling paranormal account that has chilled the world. Available on Kindle, on Audible, and in paperbook. Dare you read? Dare you step inside a most haunted house?
The Paranormal Chronicles.
And they would bury them in like a little fissure in a cave. So they weren't that big. They had to use female archaeologists to spelunk into the cave because the men wouldn't fit. And so it was this female team, and it's thousands of bones that they found.
That wasn't the ones on the island of Flores.
No, but I was getting to that. Yeah, the Littlefoot, the hobbits that were alive when humans were alive. And I wonder about the Isle of Flores. Are the smaller species of humans, could those have been Nordic trolls or gnomes or elves? Like all these cultures talk about little people. In Flores, the little people, and then the Philippines has a lot of lore. And I know this from my Filipino brother-in-law. 7 races, 7 types of people. They're big into the supernatural. Humans are the lowest because we don't have magic. In the Philippines, they talked about how they lived in the mountains, but that mountain was a volcano. And they would come down to steal food from the farmers, and they tended to be aggressive. But then the volcano erupted, and they haven't been seen since. Oh, so they
got wiped out for the volcano.
Wiped out, and my brother-in-law's mom knew somebody from her village, a little girl that went missing for 3 days, And when she came back, she said she was playing with the little people. Yeah, and that's very common. Like the fair folk and the little people in Britain and Ireland, that you hang out with them and you think you've been gone 15 minutes and it's been like a week. And that's really common in a lot of cultures.
What is it, lost time? Whatever that
you lose time.
Yeah.
And that myth about you don't ever accept fairy hospitality because then you get stuck with them. You're not supposed to eat their food or anything.
No, I hadn't heard that.
Yeah.
Eat their food, and I don't know, maybe
they're not particularly
that's
friendly.
what Gulliver's Travels maybe came.
Yeah, well that's, or like in Pan's Labyrinth, how she's not supposed to eat the food and she does, and that weird monster with his eyes in his hand eats the fairy and then tries to kill her. Yeah, it is very strange, and then and there's the little people aren't supposed to be particularly nice. Like people, we see fairies and are like, oh, Tinkerbell and everything's so wonderful. Fairies are not nice. They're volatile. If you look at mythology, especially the British ones, they're nasty. Yeah. They're mean. Like one of the leprechaun legend, that there's a leprechaun story where a man caught one. It's a really well-known Irish tale. He caught one and he made it show him the gold. So the leprechaun said, it's under this blade of grass in a field. So the guy put a red ribbon on the grass. And he said, I'll come back for it tomorrow. And when he went back the next day, every single blade of grass had a red ribbon. Yeah, so you don't mess with the fair folk. You don't disturb them, or else they'll come for you. Well, and then the cultures have the repeating stories. Well, that if you go with the little people, you'll be gone for ages. Dragons. Nearly every single culture on the planet, except for maybe 5, have tales of dragons. Which, logical explanation, if they accidentally excavated, dinosaur bones or other bones, it's plausible. It is very strange, though. Ancient aliens, every culture about things coming from the sky and looking similar, and chariots of fire, that Eric von Daniken book, and
that sparked off a whole industry now.
Oh yeah, that show with that guy with the hair. But it is kind of bizarre, some of the things that they, like India, one of their stories has basically like a space battle, like a nuclear event in the sky, and ships which seem like Star Destroyers shooting at each other, nuking each other, and then Viking end times is it sounds like a nuclear event, that the Fenrir wolf will swallow the moon or whatever, and it's just strange how these things tend to repeat.
I heard a story about a medieval German town where they documented like some sort of battle in the sky.
Yeah, and then some artwork, medieval and Renaissance artwork. It'll be pictures of like the Virgin Mary and Jesus, and there'll be a little UFO in the background. That's weird too. I mean, the pyramids have flying things. The Aztec, the Inca talk about it. The drawings, the Nazca lines, some of them look like a spaceman. And then they all talk about people from the sky. That city in Mexico, Teotihuacan, the Aztecs didn't build it. They found it.
Oh, that's right, yeah.
Yeah, it had already been built. So they claimed the gods made it. And, work smarter, not harder. They decided to live in it. Yeah. It's already there, might as well. But who built it? That's strange. And they're barely doing studies on it. And then South America, they have that city in the desert outside of the Andes that has been flipped over. That the blocks look like letter H's, but it like a mega flood probably did occur at the end of the Ice Age.
Up, though. That's high up in the Andes.
Oh, I know, right? It's like what happened? But the blocks have been flipped over. Yeah. And they should have been upright, and it was just some city that predates Inca. Well,
they're saying that it's very difficult for us to even make blocks like that because they have real sharp edges and everything fits perfectly.
It's so exact and not a lot of metal in them. Like the Inca ones were put together without metal. Some of the blocks, I think, is it that city, the flipped over one, where some of the blocks have a divot in them where they might have poured metal into it, or is it an Incan city? But that's bizarre. I've also heard some of them show evidence of laser cutting.
It looks as it has little holes drilled in them, and they're all exactly the same space.
And and then the credit card trick, you can't fit a credit card in between the stones.
My theory is that I think that man is much older than they say he is. I think that we've been around maybe.
It's much smarter.
Yeah.
They always say, oh no, ancient man couldn't have built that. Oh, you're kind of not giving them enough credit.
I think that there's been civilizations like ours, just as advanced, that have come up and have destroyed themselves and been covered over.
It could be. Yeah.
I think there has been, and I think that's where all this stuff's coming
I've wondered about that too.
Because think about it, because stuff gets buried even over 1,000 years, stuff is like 20 feet underground. What's 1,000 feet underground?
Yeah.
There could be a city down there.
And
we wouldn't
well,
know that.
they did find one in Turkey, an underground city in Turkey that had air conditioning. They figured out some way to channel in air, but it was just several stories. Probably had thousands of people underground, and this thing is old. It's like, you know, Sumeria old, and it has echo chambers. They think they used it for religious practices. These under the ground that your voice projects in such a way that it'll induce hallucinations. Yeah, like auditory hallucinations that makes you all loopy.
That's amazing.
So there's a whole bunch of old stuff. Well, the mound building in America, some people say that the Mayans community fell apart, that they just traveled up the coastline and ended up in the deep south, because you'll see mounds and Mayan artwork in the southern states. There's that mound that looks like a snake, and then in St. Louis, Missouri, it was the biggest city in the Americas, Cahokia. It was a Native American little trading post, and it had a couple thousand people in it.
So I've heard about that, the Maya.
Yeah, and then the Anasazi people that kind of died out as well in the desert.
I also heard that they did some studies about, they used like a color blue, and that stuff can only be found like at where the Mississippi River starts up
that's
there.
Right.
Yeah, and that's where it came from. How did they get it all the way down?
Yeah,
there?
well, the words. Michigan is this in Spanish, the Aztec Michoacan, which is a state in Mexico, and so the words are very similar.
I think they did travel.
Yeah, more than they thought. Just like the Chumash Indians on the coast of California, some of their artwork is similar to prehistoric Japanese artwork.
And they've taken it to Japan.
Yeah, they studied it there, and that was remarkable. Just like that little Roman figure that showed up in Mexico. How did that get there?
I'd like to see that one to take a look at. Just like the little jet that they have. And,
and then the little, was it the Maya or the Aztec, the little plane?
Yeah, the little plane. That's the one that ancient alien guys wears on his lapel.
Oh,
Giorgio
Tsoukalos.
Yeah, there you go. But that's amazing. That's why I think that we're older than that. I think, and I think the reason they don't want to say anything is because they don't want to rewrite the history books. It's too expensive. It's too political. And it's just not something that they want to.
Well, we keep unearthing things that are older and older and older, and it's like, this is the oldest. Oh no, it's this. It's this. It's this.
But it's not written about. They just leave it at Lucy, and that's it.
Yeah.
You know, nothing else. Nothing else. Lucy,
Artie.
And that's it, and Troy, ancient Troy, and that's it. Nothing else. There's no history after. There's no history before the Egyptians.
Yeah, and like the Egyptians were the only people with the community. Well, I mean, Stonehenge is there, and there was a little Neolithic civilization right outside of Stonehenge. They could have walked it in a day, so they actually had a large community living there.
And what a lot of people don't know is when the Egyptians were first starting out, in all that, they were still mammoths
right?
around.
In North America.
There were mammoths on an island in California, those little small mammoths.
And the Egyptians had toothpaste. They had some, using some, mineral or something, or herb that is used in modern toothpaste. It's very abrasive, so in modern toothpaste, it's in small amounts because it'll make your gums bleed. But but they must have had some nice teeth.
Well, they use those reed papyrus.
Oh, yeah. The Chinese had, toothpaste, toothbrushes, and their stuff is really old as well. I think the Chinese stuff is probably older because historical dates, it's Mesopotamia first, and then Egypt, and then Indus, China. But I wonder if China's just as old, because they say it's like 500 years later. I wonder. And then the Indus civilization had all this sewer city planning, and they collapsed, and theirs is bizarre as well.
That's amazing. And the Taj Mahal and all that stuff. To me, the Taj Mahal looks like a modern temple.
Yeah.
It's really old, too. Same like Angkor Wat. I bet you that thing was beautiful.
Oh, yeah, Angkor Wat. It has a little carving of what looks like a dinosaur, and in that part, in Southeast Asia, there's another community, too, like on a little island. The locals avoid it. They say it's like haunted or cursed, and it was like a jungle civilization that just...
A little island?
Yeah, it's like, or like a little peninsula, but it's very hard to get to, and it's partially flooded.
Yeah, but there's still stuff that even scared them.
Yeah, they were weirded out by it.
I don't know, I keep seeing this thing on the internet about some tribe that you go on their island and they'll kill you even now modern.
Oh, yeah. There's a couple that they're in the middle of the Pacific, and yeah, they're very aggressive. So last time, a helicopter flew by, they started throwing spears at it. I don't know if this is the same tribe. One of the tribes, it may be a different one. In World War II, since there was all this fighting in the South Pacific, a plane might have dropped something or flown by. They worship planes.
Cargo cults.
Yeah. They worship that as a god.
When they'll build them, they'll build little models out of whatever materials
Yeah,
they
they
have,
make little
hoping
planes.
it'll come back because they bring them spam.
Which is
you know?
which is
Yeah.
kind of like Ancient Aliens
Yeah.
type thing
Mhm.
too. They built them as well.
That's right. I saw a documentary about, they actually built like a runway, well, according to them, what they thought was a runway, and they built like a plane out of palm trees and stuff at the end of it, hoping that they would come back. What looked like an airplane.
They want to leave the island.
That's unusual. Yeah, and it's still going on? Is it still?
I don't know, maybe? Or I don't know if they stopped, but what about hauntings?
The main premise of the show. I've seen ghosts. I can tell you, I've seen them.
What have you seen?
Well, I used to live in a haunted house.
Like when you were little?
No, before we bought this house, and before I met my wife, I owned a house here on the east side of town, not too far from here. And I would sit in the living room at night, and I'd be watching TV, and out of the hallway in the corner, I could see something was watching me. Out of the corner of my eye, I always knew somebody was watching. And one day, just out of the blue, it was like 1 o'clock in the morning, I was watching TV, and I just looked instantly when I had that little feeling, and I saw his head just poke out looking at me. It was a little blonde guy. White guy.
Oh, like grown?
No, it was like a teenager or
Ah.
something, I could tell. It was like a kid. And I thought, somebody's getting into the house, And he just, boom, boom, disappeared, like instantly. But enough that I could catch him. And I ran back there and looked, and there was nothing. Everything's closed up and all that. So I went back and I sat down, and I could tell again something was watching me, and I just finally yelled out, and I said, look, either go back and leave me alone, or come out here and watch TV with me, but just leave me alone. Just quit spying on me. And it stopped. And then when I married my wife, she moved in with me and everything, and I was working evenings one time, and I came home from work, and just as casual as she asked, how's your day, she said, oh, by the way, who's the little blonde kid that lives in the back room? I thought, I'm not crazy.
Oh, no. Well, that's kind of what happened. I work at the school was built in 1927. It's old. It was a courthouse before it was a school, so they actually repurposed it. It's crazy old, and a lot of people have seen stuff. My classroom is right above the main staircase, and everyone says there's a little girl on the staircase. One of the previous principals saw the little girl. He left his office and saw a little girl in white. My classroom, the whiteboard, I have to have my back to the door to clean it. For years, there'd always be a little figure, like watching me. Like I could see a little shadowy thing, like peeking her, I assume it's her head in, watching, or she'd be by the desk. And I would turn around and she'd be gone. And I would see her zip out. So I had like a ESP conversation, like a mental conversation. I never spoke, but I said, okay, I'm benign. I think you're just curious and you're benign. I'm not going to mess with you. I'm not going to do anything, so please don't mess with me. I'm not going to hurt you in any way. I'm not going to bother you. And so we had that agreement. So she was just a little visitor that I had for years. She was just watching me. I think she was just curious. And I would stay so late after school. And it was, I never felt anything ominous or malevolent about her at all. She's a benign. But last school year and this one, I haven't seen her at all. I think she either got bored with me because I'm so routine. Like, this chick is boring. Or there, 2 classrooms down is this young male teacher, and all the living girls have a crush on him. So I think the little ghost has a crush on the male teacher and is probably watching him. So I haven't seen her anymore. So she left, and that's fine.
Did you ask him about it?
No, I don't. I need to ask him if he's felt any vibes. But supposedly, there was a teacher there who would bring her daughter in the summer to prep her classroom, and she would give the little girl the color pencils and say, "Oh, go sit in the hall and color." The little girl wandered off, and so the teacher mom called for her, and she came back, and she said she had been playing with a little girl, and there's nobody in there. So yeah, it's just a ghost that gets bored and
that's creepy,
probably lonely. But there's nothing malevolent with that one. But the other one, in one of the other buildings, not in the main building, the bathroom there, first of all, will lock from the inside. It sticks. Kids have gotten stuck in there, and they can't get out. And so they'll have to knock and knock, and like this, your cell phone will go like signal dead because the whole building is a dead zone. And so I was testing out there, so I went to use the bathroom. I used it and was washing my hands, and I had to leave. I had to leave because something wanted me out. Something was behind me. Something chased me out. And I didn't feel good until I got back into the daylight, till I left the building. And I will never use that bathroom alone. Something was either that or I psyched myself out, but that was weird. And so I'm not the only one who's reported weirdness in that bathroom. Nobody likes that bathroom.
Oh wow, that's amazing. And this high school, both our parents went to that high school.
Yeah, And so it's been
yeah.
there forever.
It's a long time.
And I'm sure there have been fires. I know the Companion Elementary School had a fire. And people have seen the little boy in the auditorium. One of my coworkers, he's a basketball coach, so he goes to the gym, like at 6 or 7. And he's the only person in there, and he's heard the door open. And he's looked, there's no custodians, there's no security. And so he'll be doing his business and then, like, getting the basketballs ready and whatever. And he saw a little boy looking down on him because he was on the court, and the little boy was looking at him. And so he thought, well, that shouldn't be here. But there was no little boy there. We checked it out. So
That's amazing.
It's strange. One of the security guards one time, because high schools have 24/7 security, so the night guard said that he was walking on the outside, and one of the windows, he could see the light was on the second floor. So he went in. He thought maybe it was custodian. Nobody was there. Turned it off. Left. By the time he got back outside, it was on again. Could be a short, but you know, the kids have seen things, and the teachers have seen things, and most of it's benign, but it's a little creepy at night.
I don't know. I've been in El Paso High in the middle of the night, like about 2 a.m. It was when I was at the sheriff's department. I had a friend who was one of the school police officers, and they had to go check the buildings at night. And one time he called me up, he called me on the cell phone. He goes, "Hey, I'm going to check El Paso High. You want to come with me? I know you're out on patrol." So okay, I called up and I go, "Hey, I'm going to go help school police. He wants me to help him go check a building." So I got it cleared and everything. They said, "Yeah, go ahead." So we went, and he goes, "Okay, let's go inside." And that place is scaring hell in the middle of the night. Even with 2 cops in uniform with guns, we were even freaked out. You know, because they said, "Okay, we're going to go to the second floor, and when you go here, you're going to feel this is where the ghost is, and you're going to feel cold." You know, because I don't like to come out here. The only reason I'm up here is because you're here with me. Okay, so yeah, sure enough, we went right through there, and you just felt a cold spot. And it was weird because I felt the cold spot, I went, and I walked back, and the cold spot was gone. It was so weird, and you could tell something was right behind you the whole time. It was like right in your back of your neck, like whispering. Like,
yeah,
you
see,
could
that's
tell
what I felt in the bathroom. To me, the cold spots are more malevolent. I've never once felt that with the little visitor I had, which I don't have.
Well, we didn't feel that with the ghost in the old house. There was nothing. You didn't feel. Because
the one you described in the old house sounds like what I had.
Yeah,
just curious.
Yeah, and that's all it was. But in that school, that was freaky. We didn't know, and I told him, I don't blame you. You know, I don't want to even be in here. You know, so we checked it. We left, but we didn't see anything. But we sure felt it. You know, we heard it, and you could hear noises. You could hear walking. You could hear doors slamming. You heard all of it.
Oh, see, I don't really hear much at Isleta. The time I stayed until 10, I heard like a weird little scratching sound. I'm guessing it was just maybe like a mouse in the lockers. But yeah, I did hightail it out of there because it had gotten dark.
I don't know how you can stay in schools after dark. It's
you know where I didn't feel anything when I was in the portables because they were renovating it. Not a thing out there. Out there I was more afraid some crazy crackhead was going to come in or something. Yeah, so there was nothing at all, ever out there. I was more afraid that somebody was going to mug me.
You know, you see a lot of stuff, you hear a lot. Everybody has a ghost story. Everybody I've run into has one of something. I've never run into anybody that doesn't have some sort of ghost story.
I think my brother had one too. When you remember that department store Wynn's?
Oh yeah.
His first job, their second floor, like stock room, he'd turn off the light and it would be back on, and they could hear like talking, and there was nothing. And so he's got one, and it's just everybody has
something. You ask somebody, and you'll start a conversation.
Oh yeah, everybody has something paranormal. Has something like our Aunt Roxanne, her brother. Well, she's mildly psychic. Her brother was a long haul trucker. I don't know if he's retired, but he might have had a Bigfoot encounter. He was that was his job, long haul trucking somewhere in the Pacific Northwest. And it was nighttime, so he pulled his truck over by the woods to sleep at night. Something pushed the truck. Something was banging on the truck and rocking this huge semi. He thinks it was Bigfoot, but he didn't go out to see. I mean, I wouldn't either. It could have been a bear, and then you really don't want to go out.
Probably was a bear.
Yeah, it could have been.
Maybe he was hauling fish or salmon.
Maybe.
And that could have been. But yeah, but you don't want to know.
Yeah, you don't want to know.
But it's been fun, and it's great having you here, Justyne. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you for having me. This was...
It's just a fun place to come and talk and, exchange ideas. And, we don't do gotcha questions. We don't do weird anything like that. We just let our guests talk about, and we talk about whatever we feel like talking about at the time. So.
Well, I enjoyed being here. I feel famous now.
Yeah, you are. You are famous now. You're famous all over the world because it's a global network, and we have listeners all over the world.
We'll have to do a part 2 or have my brother on as a guest.
Oh, absolutely. Yes. Yeah. We'll definitely do a part 2,
Okay.
And we can do that. And remember, folks, We do have a Facebook fan page, Event Horizon Internet Radio Talk Show. So if you want to check out there and like our site, and you'll keep up with what guests we have, whatever's going on with us, you can keep tabs there. And until then, you all take care. This is Event Horizon Show. I'm Dave Dominguez, and you all be safe, be good to each other. Have a good night.
You are listening to the Paranormal Chronicles Network. Please remember to subscribe so you never miss an episode. Visit theparanormalchronicles.com for paranormal news, reports, pictures, audio, and video content. Find us on Facebook at The Paranormal Chronicles. Together, we explore the unknown.
You have been listening to the Paranormal Chronicles Network. Do sleep well.